Pamela. Hey, Julie. Hey, Kingfisher. Hey, Nikolai. Oh, I love that name. I always love that name. Hey, Penny. Hey, Judy. Hey, Karen. How are all my night dwellers doing tonight? Hey, over there in YouTube land. It's hot. Thank God. Tonight is Paranormal Wednesday. Hey, Jester. Hello, Kosher Neptune. Thank you for the follow. That's right, X. Walk our way into stories. I don't know who you're talking about, Jessica. Might have to be a break. Hello, Amy. Hey, Just. Send again. Hey, Sherry. Twin Souls Paranormal. How are you doing, darling? Hey, Spitfire. Ooh. Let's start, Sherry. Tap, tap, tap. Thank you, Penny. Hey, Mia. Hello, Kelly Rose. Let's share the live. 5 friends, 10 friends, 15, 20. Sky's the limit. Let's start sharing it. Do you like scary stories? Someone else probably does too. Tap, 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 tap. I need to be on a dance floor with this one. Hey, Ginger Moon. Tonight is Paranormal Wednesday. Did you watch the content today? Do you know what the story is going to be? The first story. There's the second one tonight too. We are visiting Idaho, the potato state. Hey, Judy. Hey, Juju Beauty. Thank you. If you are new here and this is your first time on Twisted Tales Live, welcome. I am Bryn Morgan. I'm a horror author. I am also a teller of scary stories, paranormal stories, ghost stories, true crime, serial non-livers, urban legend, Appalachian horror, cryptids, short stories, fiction, you name it, I tell it. Everybody's staying cool. Everyone's having contents like we are here. Hey there, lovely. Hey Lulu, how are you tonight? Hey Truth, hey Tracy, hey Spitfire, hey Kimmy. Hello Bob, how are you? Hey Legend of the 80s. Hey Rose, come on in, make yourselves at home. Hey Mary, hey Marine's daughter. 1 minute. Thank you, Tanya Jean. Hey Melanie. Hello Alicia, Indiana girl. Who's that girl? Hey Harper's Happenings. How are you? Good to see you all. Hello Eddie Santiago. Welcome, night dwellers, to the night realm. I am the Night Queen, and tonight is Paranormal Wednesday. Are you ready? Let me know in the comments. We have a way of how we do things here to go into story time. And if you know what it is, join in with me. Lower your lights. Lock your doors. Light a candle for ambiance, or to chase those shadows away. Pull your curtains nice and tight. Wrap yourself in your warmest blanket to avoid the chills that are about to crawl up your spine. And let's begin. Tonight, well, I should say that my research was difficult. Idaho is quite a haunting state. In fact, so haunting that I couldn't choose just one. So I chose two of the most haunting and true ghost stories from Idaho, the Potato State. Potato State is quite haunted, as you're about to find out. So sit back and relax for the next couple of hours. This is a safe, warm, loving environment. There is no judgment here. There is no negativity here. And if there is, well, it doesn't last. I will say that. Put all your cares behind you for the next couple of hours as I begin the story of the Cave Witch. Let's begin. The Cave Witch of Idaho. Welcome, night dwellers, to the darkest corners of the night realm. I am your Night Queen, and tonight I drag you into the suffocating darkness of the Idaho wilderness, where ancient lava tubes hold secrets that have festered for over a century. Tonight, we descend into Buffalo Cave, where the very stones weep with the memory of violence, and where a soul so twisted in life became something far more terrifying in death. They call him the Cave Witch of Idaho, but he was not always a creature of shadow and bone. No. Once he walked among the living, with blood on his hands and murder in his heart. Now, he haunts the depths where his butchered remains were scattered like offerings to some unholy god. Settle in, night dwellers, for this tale will bury deep into your dreams and leave you questioning every shadow that dances in your peripheral vision. Thank you, X. In the realm where I reign supreme, there are no happy endings, unfortunately. Only the endless echo of screams that time has failed to silence. Chapter 1. The Blood-Soaked Genesis. What seeds of evil must be planted for a soul to become a witch of the damned? The year was 1916, and death walked the dusty streets of Utah Territory in the form of a man named Joseph Henry Lovelace. How appropriate. But to call him merely a man would be to diminish the monster that lurks beneath his skin. Picture, if you will, night dwellers, a figure born from the marriage of Mormon pioneers and frontier brutality. It wasn't good. Joseph Henry Lovelace entered the world, thank you so much, entered the world on December the 13th, 1870, when the West was still a wild and justice was often found at the end of a rope. His parents were devout Latter-day Saints, but their son would prove that even the most sacred of birthlines can birth demons. Oh yes, you heard me right. By 1916, Lovelace had already carved a path of destruction across the American frontier. He was a bootlegger, a counterfeiter, a master of aliases. Walt Kahns, Charles Smith, and dozens of other false identities that he wore like a mask to hide his true, corrupted nature. But his greatest talent, his most horrifying skill, was escape. He was in prison quite a few times, and every time he managed to escape. One such night when the moon was big and full and was lighting up his cell, he told an inmate in the jail next to him, "They can't hold me," he would whisper, his eyes gleaming with malevolent intelligence. "I got tricks they ain't ever seen. A man who knows how to use a saw blade hidden in his boot heel. Well, there ain't a jail built that can contain him. And I'm telling you now, boys, this jail won't contain me." And he was right. Time and time again, Lovelace would vanish from custody like smoke, leaving behind only saw-through bars and the bitter taste of failure in his jailer's mouth. How in the daggone does he do that every time? Why can't we hold him? Something weird about that man, sir. When he wants to get out, he's gonna get out. But it was in the pre-dawn darkness of May 1916 that Joseph Henry Lovelace would commit the act that would seal his fate and transform him into something far worse than human. Agnes Octavia Caldwell slept peacefully in her bed, unaware, completely unaware, that death stood over her in the form of the man she called husband. And oh, how she hated him. And oh, how he hated her. In his hands, cold and steady, Lovelace gripped a weapon. The very tool that would soon paint their bedroom walls with her blood. Crack! The weapon fell with the finality of judgment. Once, thank you, Ginger, once, twice, again and again, thank you, Janet, and again until Agnes's screams were silenced forever, and her blood pooled like dark wine across the floorboards. But this was not a crime of passion, night dwellers. This was something far more sinister. for watching this butchery, witnessing every blood-soaked moment, were two small children, Agnes's babies, their eyes wide with terror as they watched their stepfather transform into a creature of absolute evil. Thank you, Zoe Ann. Loveless looked at his two stepchildren, who he thought as no more than runts. He looked at them, his face covered in blood, his eyes with an otherworldly gleam. Come here, you two. But they backed off into a corner. Now you see what happens to those who cross me. You ever do that? See what happened to your mama? I'll make it worse on you. Loveless hissed at the cowering children, his clothes now drenched in their mother's blood. Remember this night, little ones. Remember it well. This was the night that your father sent your mother to hell. And with that, he vanished into the darkness, wearing that telltale maroon sweater that would one day help identify his own butchered remains. But the evil that he had unleashed that night, it followed him like a shadow, growing stronger with each passing day. The manhunt began immediately as soon as Agnes was found. Wanted posters bearing his likeness spread across the territory like a plague, describing him down to his blood-stained clothing. But Joseph Henry Lovelace had one final escape planned, one that would take him from the realm of the living into something far more terrifying. For in that darkness ahead lay Buffalo Cave, ancient and hungry, waiting to claim him. Thank you, X. And there in those depths where sunlight fears to tread, an unaliver would die, only to be reborn as the cave witch of Idaho, whose vengeance would span more than a century. The blood was in the water now, night dwellers. The transformation had begun. Thank you, a Marine's daughter. Thank you. Chapter 2. The Descent into Darkness. When does a killer become something more terrifying than human? Well, when he enters Buffalo Cave, of course. The Civil Defense caves near DuBois, Idaho are not merely holes in the ground, my dear night dwellers. They are ancient lava tubes, born from the Earth's own violent birth pangs millions of years ago. In fact, During the Cold War, these caves served as potential fallout shelters, places where the living might hide from nuclear annihilation. How fitting then that they would become the eternal prison of one who had already brought apocalypse, thank you, Paul, to an innocent family. But in 1916, these caves were simply dark. Forgotten wounds in the earth, perfect for a man who needed to disappear forever. They're closing in on me, Lovelace muttered to himself as he stumbled through the Idaho wilderness. He could see the dust being kicked up by the horses in the distance. They were not that far behind. His maroon sweater were now torn and filthy from days of running. Every lawman from here to California wants my head. But they'll never find me in the deep places. No, sir, they'll never find me where the earth itself can swallow a man's screams. Come on and try to get me. The wanted posters had spread like wildfire with a generous bounty from Agnes' parents. It was hefty. The description was devastatingly accurate. Thank you, Ginger. Light-colored hat, brown coat, red maroon sweater, blue overalls over black trousers. Every detail that would later help forensic genealogists identify his remains over a year later. But Joseph Henry Lovelace was beyond caring about such earthly concerns. The darkness was calling to him now, promising sanctuary from the justice that haunted him. He could hear voices calling him deeper into the cavernous depths. It was sometime in late May 1916 when Lovelace discovered the entrance to what would become his tomb. Buffalo Cave yawned before him like the mouth of some primordial beast. Thank you, Shirley. Offering the perfect place for a man who had become something less than human. The darkness embraced him. Thank you. Like an old friend as he descended into the bowels of the earth, carrying with him the weight of his unspeakable crimes. But he was not alone in those depths, night dwellers. Oh no. Thank you, Hopi love. Something else dwelt in Buffalo Cave. Something that had been waiting for decades, perhaps centuries, for a soul dark enough to serve its purpose. As Lovelace made his camp in the deepest recesses of the cave, strange things began to happen to him. Whispers echoed from the walls. Voices speaking in languages that predated human civilization. Shadows moved independently of any light source. The only light he had was a flame, writhing and coiling like living things. And in that absolute darkness, eyes watched, waited, judged. Lovelace could not sleep. The cave was cold and dark. A candle wouldn't even stay lit anymore. "Who's there?" Lovelace called out one night, his voice cracking with fear. "Show yourself, damn you! I ain't afraid of no ghost!" But the cave remained silent, save for the sound of his own ragged breathing. Thank you, Kimberly. And the steady drip of water somewhere in the distance. Thank you, Wolf's whisper. Yet he could still feel them, the watchers in the dark, the ancient spirits that had claimed his place as their own. And slowly, thank you, Kimberly, inexorably they begin to work their will upon him. The transformation was not immediate, Night Dwellers. It began with small things, cuts that appeared on his flesh without explanation, voices that whispered his victims' names in the dead of night. You unalived your wife. Shame on you. You made a vow. You broke it. Visions of Agnes's bloody corpse rising from the cave. Thank you, Tanya Jean. Rising from the cave floor to accuse him. But as days turned to weeks, something far more sinister took hold. Joseph Henry Lovelace was becoming something else. Something that belonged more to the realm of nightmares than to the realm of the living. His eyes took on an otherworldly gleam. His fingers grew sharp as claws, and his voice began to echo with the voices of all his victims. Why did you do it, Joseph? Why did you unalive me? Why did you leave my children without a mother? You're gonna pay, Joseph. You're gonna pay more than you've ever paid before. Thank you, Nana Sherry. But the cave spirits demanded a price for this transformation. They required payment in blood and bone, in suffering and terror. And so, on a night when the moon was nothing but a cold sliver in the star-drunk sky, they came for him. The ancient spirits in the cave. Spirits in the form of Agnes, his 2 stepchildren, the other men that he had unalived down through his years. They all came toward him. Time for retribution, Joseph. Why did you kill me, Joseph? Why did you take me from my children? Now we starve. Now we have no food. Now we have no blankets. We are the ancient ones. We will take care of you and protect you, children. Who do you want to stand punishment for your crimes? I was just crazy. I was mad at that time. I'm not like that. Oh, but aren't you? Joseph Henry Lovelace. The ancient voice whispered and writhed and thrived with the power of the people that Joseph had taken behind him. I pronounce judgment on you, Joseph Henry Lovelace. I am ancient. I am forever. I pronounce judgment on you. Come here, Joseph. I'll try not to hurt you as badly as you hurt me. Mommy, can we do it too? You remember when you accused me of stealing that horse? Joseph Henry Lovelace? I begged for mercy because I wasn't the one who did it. You did. The tools that the ancient spirit allowed them to use were sharp. Thank you, Judy. And merciless. Saws and blades that cut through flesh and bone with surgical precision. But this was not unaliving. This wasn't schmurder, night dwellers. This was metamorphosis. They dismembered Joseph Henry Lovelace piece by piece, each cut deliberate and ritualistic as the Ancient One looked on, transforming him from a mere unaliver into something far more powerful and terrifying. His head, the seat of his unaliving thoughts, was taken first and hidden away where mortal eye would never find it. His torso, wrapped in burlap like some unholy gift, was placed in the deepest chamber. His limbs were scattered throughout the cave system, each piece carefully positioned according to ancient and terrible laws. And there, in the suffocating darkness of Buffalo Cave, the cave witch of Idaho was born. No longer bound by flesh, no longer limited by human weakness, he had become something eternal and filled with limitless rage. For over 60 years, he waited in those depths, his fury growing stronger with each passing season. The cave became his domain, other than the Ancient One, his kingdom of bones and shadows, and all the while, he hungered for the day when the living would discover his secret and feel his wrath. The day was coming soon, night dwellers. That day was coming soon. Chapter 3, The Cursed Discovery. What price do the innocent pay when they disturb the slumber of the damned? Thank you, Cece. August the 26th, 1979. A day that should have been filled with summer sunshine and innocent family adventure. But in my realm, night dwellers, you know that innocence is merely a prelude to horror, and family outings often become journeys into hell itself. The family had come to Buffalo Cave seeking arrowheads, ancient artifacts left behind by Idaho's first inhabitants. How prophetic that they would instead uncover evidence of something far more sinister. Something that had been waiting in the darkness for over 60 years to reveal its terrible secret. Look at this cave, kids! The father called out to his family, his voice echoing off the ancient lava walls. Look at this! Y'all are gonna love exploring in here. Who knows what kind of treasures we're gonna find today? Daddy, if we find them, can we keep them? Well, not all of them. We want to keep some for more people, but yeah, y'all can keep as many as you can, and then we'll leave some of them here. And deep in the depths, someone was listening. The cave witch, night dwellers. He had felt their footsteps the moment they entered his domain. He was mad too, because the Ancient One had dubbed him the Cave Witch. I'm not a woman. You're whatever I say you are. You are my witch. You shall remain my witch. You are the Cave Witch of these caves. He had felt their footsteps the moment they entered his domain, had tasted their innocence on the still cave air. After decades of solitude, visitors had finally come to witness his handiwork. The family ventured deeper into the cave system, their flashlights cutting feeble paths through the consuming darkness. They laughed and called to each other. The Cave Witch listened. Their voices disturbing the profound silence that had blanketed this place for generations. But with each step, they drew closer to the chamber where the witch's torso lay waiting. Hey, kids, come over here. I found one. I found an arrowhead. What did you say, Dad? Dad, where are you? The children had wandered away from Daddy and Mommy. Come over here. Come here, Lucy. Lucy. Dad, where are you? I'm back here. The voice was trembling as the flashlight beam fell upon something that shouldn't exist in the world of the living. The Cave Witch had studied them, studied their father, learned his voice, and mimicked him to perfection. There in the deepest recess of the cave, wrapped in rotting burlap like some cursed burial shroud, was the headless torso of Joseph Henry Lovelace. Daddy? Daddy, we found something. What did you find? The kids turned around and ran away quickly. And then they saw their father in the distance with his flashlight. Kids, where did you go? Lucy, Tommy, I told you to stay right here. Daddy, we heard you calling us. I didn't call you, kids. Daddy, we found something. Can you come look at it with us? We're scared. To that terrified family, it was simply a nightmare made flesh. A human body, without its most human feature, preserved by the cave's unique conditions, and radiating an aura of pure malevolence. The burlap had protected the remains from complete decay, but what they found was far worse than a skeleton. The torso was mummified, desiccated, yet somehow still emanating an aura of presence, as if whatever had once inhabited this flesh had never truly departed. The maroon sweater, now faded and rotting, still clung to the remains, like a second skin, exactly as described on those century-old wanted posters. But it was the feeling that emanated from the discovery that truly terrified them beyond words. Night dwellers, the cave itself seemed to pulse with malevolent energy, if their presence had awakened something that had been slumbering in the depths. Whispers began to echo from the walls, not the voices of the living, no, but something else entirely. The mother heard, "You have found me," the whisper seemed to say, carried on air that suddenly grew ice cold despite the summer heat above. "Thank you, Mia. You have disturbed my rest, and now you belong to me." The family fled. Of course, they stumbled through the darkness, their screams echoing off the cave walls as they raced toward the surface and the blessed light of day. But they carried something with them as they ran, the knowledge of what they had seen, and the terrible certainty that they had awakened something that should have remained buried forever. They called the police, and the authorities arrived within hours. Clark County Sheriff's deputies descended into Buffalo Cave with forensic equipment and powerful lights, but even they felt the oppressive weight of the witch's presence. The cave seemed to resist their investigation. Their equipment malfunctioned without explanation, and several officers reported hearing voices calling to them from the deeper tunnels. The lead investigator radioed to the surface. "We've got a headless torso down here." His voice tight with professional control, barely masking his unease. "It's a male, wrapped in burlap. Looks like he's been here for decades. But there's something else." "What's that, sir?" "Something about this place ain't right." The forensic team documented everything they could, but their work was hampered by an inexplicable series of equipment failures and accidents. Cameras refused to function properly. Recording devices captured only static and whispers. And more than one investigator reported feeling invisible hands touching them in the darkness. They removed the torso from its resting place, but in doing so, they made a terrible mistake. The cave witch's physical anchor to the mortal world had been disturbed, and his rage was now free to manifest in ways that defied human understanding. Over the following days, as the remains were transported to laboratories across the country, strange accidents began to plague everyone who had been involved in the discovery. The FBI's elite forensic team found themselves unable to identify the remains, despite their cutting-edge techniques. The Smithsonian's experts were equally baffled, as if the very essence of the corpse resisted all attempts at identification. But the cave witch was far from finished with revealing his secrets. He waited 63 years for someone to find his torso, and now he would ensure that the rest of his remains were discovered as well. For he had plans, night dwellers, terrible plans that required his complete resurrection. The first discovery had just been the beginning. The worst was yet to come. And in the depths of Buffalo Cave, in chambers that even the bravest investigators had not yet explored, something stirred. Something that had once been human, but was now so much more, and so much worse. The cave witch of Idaho was awakening, and his hunger for vengeance had only just begun. Chapter 4. The Witch's Resurrection. How does evil return from the grave to claim the living? 12 years, Night Dwellers. 12 long years, the cave witch waited after his torso was discovered, his fury building like pressure in the Earth's core. The authorities thought they had closed the case, archived the unidentified remains, and moved on with their mortal lives. But the witch, oh, the witch, well, he was just getting started. He had learned patience in the darkness of Buffalo Cave, learned to bide his time and choose his moments with supernatural precision. And on March the 30th, 1991, he decided it was time for the next phase of his resurrection. 11-year-old Sarah was exploring Buffalo Cave with the fearless curiosity that only children possess. The warnings on police tape from years past had long since faded, and to her, this was simply another adventure in the Idaho wilderness. Her mother was waiting outside the cave, leaning against the rock, reading a book, drinking water. "Mom, look what I found!" She had planned to call out, but the words died in her throat as her small hand brushed against something that should not exist. There, partially buried in the cave floor like some cursed seed waiting to sprout, was a mummified human hand. The flesh was desiccated, the fingers curved like claws, and from it radiated an aura of such malevolence that the child's blood turned to ice in her veins. But this was no random discovery, Night Dwellers. The cave witch had called to the child, had guided her steps through the labyrinth passages to this exact spot. For the witch needed his limbs to be found, needed his physical form to be reassembled so that his power could grow. When the authorities returned to Buffalo Cave for their excavation, they found more than just a hand. A doctor, an archaeologist, had heard these stories. A hand, a torso. So he decided he wanted to go and excavate and see what else just might be there. And they found more than just a hand, arms, and legs, all wrapped in the same rotting burlap, all preserved by the cave's unique conditions, all radiating that same inexplicable aura of active malevolence. This doesn't make sense, the lead archaeologist muttered as he carefully exhumed each gruesome find. This dismemberment was precise, surgical even. But who would go to such lengths to hide a body? And why scatter the pieces throughout the cave system like some kind of ritual? And I am telling you, the precision with which this was done, it makes no sense. Because it was a ritual, Night Dwellers. The ancient spirits of Buffalo Cave had not simply unaligned Joseph Henry Lovelace, they had transformed him according to laws, order, and older than human civilization. Each piece of his remains had been placed with deliberate intent, creating a pattern of power that spanned the entire cave system. As each limb was discovered and removed, the witch's presence grew stronger. Investigators reported tool malfunctions, unexplained cold spots, and the constant sensation of being watched by unseen eyes. Thank you. Equipment would work perfectly above ground and then fail mysteriously the moment that it entered the cave. Photographs came out distorted, showing strange shadows and shapes that had not been visible to the naked eye. But the cave witch's greatest power was not in terrifying the living. It was in remaining unidentified. For as long as his true name remained unknown, as long as his story remained untold, he could continue to exist in that liminal space between life and death, growing stronger with each passing year. Thank you. The FBI's elite forensic team was baffled. The Smithsonian experts found themselves unable to explain their failure. Every technique known to forensic science was applied to the remains, yet they yielded no answers. It was as if the very essence of the corpse resisted identification, as if some supernatural force was actively interfering with the investigation. I have been in forensic anthropology for 40 years, one expert said, and I've never seen anything like this. It's as if the bones themselves are fighting us, refusing to give up their secrets. We're trying to identify who this man was, and we can't. And they were right, night dwellers, for the cave witch had learned to manipulate the physical world from beyond the grave. He could interfere with scientific instruments, cloud the minds of investigators, and ensure that his true identity remained hidden in the darkness, where his power was the strongest. But he was not content to simply remain a mystery. The witch had tasted freedom when his remains were disturbed, had felt the fear of the living wash over him like sweet wine. Now he wanted more. He wanted to walk among the living again, to spread his corruption beyond the confines of Buffalo Cave. Strange accidents began to plague everyone who had been involved in the excavation. Investigators found themselves experiencing vivid nightmares in which they were lost in an endless cave system. I had a dream like that once. Pursued by something that breathed like wind through ancient bones. Some reported waking with unexplained cuts on their body. Others found their homes with the scent of decay, despite thorough cleaning. It stinks so bad in here. What did you bring back from that cave, John? His wife asked. The cave witch was reaching out from his domain, extending his influence into the world of the living. He whispered to them in their dreams, showed them visions of Octavia, Agnes Caldwell, and how he had unaligned her in vivid detail. Made them feel the terror of those children who had witnessed this murder and watched him transform into a monster. But his greatest ambition was still unfulfilled. the witch's head, the seat of his consciousness, the source of his power, remained hidden in the deepest recesses of Buffalo Cave. Without it, he was incomplete, limited in his ability to manifest in the physical world. So he waited, and he plotted, and he called out to anyone foolish enough or brave enough to venture into his domain. He mimicked voices perfectly. But the cave witch of Idaho knew that eventually someone would come seeking the final piece of his puzzle. Someone would dare to descend into the darkest depths of Buffalo Cave, guided by his whispers and promises of treasure and knowledge. And when that day came, he would be ready to claim them as his own, to add their soul to his collection of the damned, and finally, to reclaim his head and achieve his complete resurrection. The living thought they were investigating a cold case. They had no idea. They were playing a game whose rules had been written in blood and darkness over a century ago. The cave witch's plan was working perfectly. Chapter 5. The Witch's True Name. What happens when the dead are finally given voice to tell their tale? For 103 years, Night Dwellers, the cave witch of Idaho, kept his true name locked away in the shadows of Buffalo Cave. For 103 years, he wore the mask of anonymity, growing stronger in the darkness, feeding on the fear and frustration of those who sought to identify his remains. But even the most powerful curses can be broken, and sometimes it is the witch himself who provides the key. By 2019, forensic science had evolved in ways that Joseph Henry Lovelace could never have imagined in his mortal life. DNA analysis, genetic genealogy, and computer databases had created tools that could reach across centuries to identify even the most determined attempts at concealment. Thank you, Gracie. But the cave witch had grown complacent in his century of anonymity. He had forgotten that even supernatural powers have its limitations. Enter the DNA Doe Project, modern-day hunters of the dead, armed with science instead of silver bullets. Led by genealogist Lee Bingham Redgrave, they approached the Buffalo Cave mystery with methodical precision, unaware that they were about to engage in battle with forces beyond their understanding. Redgrave declared as she began her investigation, "Every John Doe has a story. Every single one of them. Every unidentified remain was once a living person with family, with connections, with a name. We just have to know how to find it. This poor man, we found his torso, we found arms, we found legs. I want to find his head. Don't you?" "Yeah," they cheered. But the cave witch was listening, Night Dwellers. He had grown curious about these new mortals who dared to challenge his anonymity. Perhaps it was time to play a different game. Perhaps it was time to reveal himself on his own terms. The DNA analysis revealed something extraordinary and disturbing. The Buffalo Cave John Doe was descended from Mormon pioneers who had come to Utah with the early settlers. How did they know that? Blood. His likely grandfather had been a polygamist with 4 wives, creating a massive family tree that spread across the American West like a spider's web. He ended up having a lot of matches that were first cousins, 3 times removed, which is, well, as later Redgrave would say, he ended up having a lot of matches that were first cousins 3 times removed, which is very unusual. One by one, we eliminated certain candidates and kept coming back to him. We believe we have identified the torso and the arms and legs, reminding us that it belongs to, well, a Joseph Henry Lovelace. But here's where the story becomes truly chilling, night dwellers. As the genealogists work through their family trees and DNA matches, they begin to experience the same strange phenomena that had plagued every previous investigation. Equipment failures, nightmares, the sensation of being watched by unseen eyes. The cave witch was revealing himself deliberately, guiding their research while simultaneously tormenting them. He wanted his true name to be known, wanted his story to be told, because he had learned something in the Century of Darkness. Infamy was a form of immortality, and immortality was power. Joseph Henry Lovelace, born December the 3rd, 1870, in Utah Territory, bootlegger, counterfeiter, escaped convict, and a wife unaliver. A man who had used aliases like Walt Carnes and Charles Smith to hide his crimes, who had kept a weapon in his boot heel to escape from jail, who had unalived Agnes Octavia Caldwell with a weapon while their children watched in terror. And now, 103 years after his death and transformation, his name was spoken aloud again. The cave witch of Ohio had proclaimed his identity, and with it, a terrible new power. We can now confidently say that the torso found in the Civil Caves in 1979 belonged to Joseph Henry Lovelace, announced Ms. Redgrave at the December 31st, 2019 press conference. This is one of the oldest cases solved using autosomal DNA. But solving the case was not the end of the story, night dwellers. It was the beginning of something far more terrifying. For when the cave witch's true name was spoken in the world of the living, when his story was broadcast across the internet and told in news around the globe, he gained something he had been seeking for over a century: recognition, remembrance, and the power that comes from being known. The official case might have been closed, but the cave witch's head was never found. It remains hidden somewhere in the deepest recesses of Buffalo Cave, waiting for someone brave enough or foolish enough to seek it out. And with each telling of his story, with each person who learns of Joseph Henry Lovelace and his transformation into something unholy, his power grows. He walks amongst us now, night dwellers, not in flesh, but in memory, in story, in the dark corners of our imagination where monsters take root and grow. Every time someone ventures into Buffalo Cave, he is there, Every time someone ventures in, every time his name is spoken, he grows stronger. Every time his story is told. Come to me, he whispers from the depths of Buffalo Cave. Come find my head, my precious visitors. Complete my resurrection, and I will show you wonders beyond imagining and terrors beyond your wildest dreams. The Cave Witch of Idaho is no longer anonymous. He is Joseph Henry Loveless, wife unaliver, an escaped convict, transformed by ancient powers into something that transcends death itself. His story has been told tonight. His name has been revealed, and his power has been unleashed upon the world. But his resurrection is not yet complete. It won't be complete until his head is found, and it is waiting to be found. And until that day comes, he will continue to haunt Buffalo Cave, growing stronger with each passing year, more cunning with each new visitor, more dangerous with each telling of his tale. So remember his name, Night Dwellers. Remember the Cave Witch of Idaho. Remember Joseph Henry Loveless. For remembering, you give him power. And in giving him power, you invite him into your dreams. The case may be solved, but the nightmare has only just begun. And that is the first story of the evening. I hope that you enjoyed it. Thank you, Leslie Marie. The next story will be The Ghost of Little Clare Church. So sad. We're going to take an intermission. And when I come back, we will continue Paranormal Wednesday. Did you like that story? Have you been to Buffalo Cave? Are you the one that's going to find his head? Hello, hello, hello. You know, when I was searching when I was searching for ghost stories in Idaho, there were so many, but this was the one that really jumped out at me. Hello, DJ Glass. Hey, Ray Ray, how are you? It was one that really jumped out at me, and I almost thought it was kind of funny that even his arrogance in death, he was mad because he was being called the cave witch. He wanted to be called the cave warlock, and the ancient one, whoever was dwelling in the cave, was stating, you will be what I call you. And so I thought that was funny. I kind of actually was laughing inside about that. Oh, thank you, Lulu. Thank you so much. I'm questioning my belief of witches now. Right. Yeah, but it's very, very interesting for sure. That scared you? I'm sorry. Glad you enjoyed it, Juju BB. Time to go head hunting. Yes, Sherry. Hey, Jareen, how are you? Thank you for all the twisted trinkets tonight. Thank you so, so much. Thank you, Soul, for those lovely roses. Your fingers have biceps now. Oh my gosh. Thank you, a Marine's daughter. Thank you so, so much. Oh my God, we're close to 400. We're nearing 400K likes. That is amazing. Thank you so much. And if you want to know why that is important, because that activates the TikTok algorithm and lets them know, hey, there is a live here that is worth looking at. And so it notifies the FYP, notifies viewers that are interested in the paranormal, ghost stories, true crime, whatever, notifies them that this is going on and they come into our life. If you are new, let me know. I want to meet you. Oh, thank you, Don Wong. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Hey, Dionia, how are you? For all my new ones in here, welcome. Do you like scary stories? Hey, Gracie, how are you? Just a couple things. We have something very special happening on August X, correct me if I'm wrong, August the 6th. I am going to be doing an interview with Chris Nitzel, Paranormal Investigators. Remember how I interviewed Santa Paranormal? And I love him to pieces now. August the 6th, 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern, I will be interviewing Chris Netzel. He has a massive following of people who love the paranormal, and I am so excited to interview him. So excited. So we need to start spreading the word. I'm sure many of you are already followers of him, as I am as well. And so I am very excited. He has the most beautiful blue eyes. Ah, you like blue eyes. So we are very excited about that. So mark that on your calendars, 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern. Don't miss it. Also, thank you for the comments, thank you for the likes, thank you for the follows, thank you for the love, thank you for the support, thank you so much. We gained some lovely families, some new night dwellers from John Santa, from Santa Paranormal, and I just adore them. And, you know, I love it that, you know, they are here with me, and I am just so humbled and so honored to have them in our midst. YouTube, we're trying to get monetized on there, but it's taking some time, and the reason that it's taking time is because the rules of YT are huge. I have to have 1,000 followers, and I have subscribers, and I have to have 4,000 hours of viewing time. Viewing hours are going up. We are nearing close to, I believe, we might be over the 350 mark, so the next goal is to try to hit 400 subscribers on YouTube. It's free, and you can actually subscribe in my bio without having to leave the page. How cool is that? Also, thank you so much for, you know, liking the content, commenting on the content that Julie, XJ, Kimmy, and myself make. If I'm missing anyone, please let me know. But thank you so much for doing that. I tell you what helps us. So, do you want to help us out to grow? Well, one, watch the video all the way through. Highly important. Number two, hit the share, that arrow. You don't have to say it, you don't have to share it with anyone just by copying link. TikTok picks up on it that you are actually interested in this content and that you want to share it. Number three, bookmark it. Make sure that little bookmark turns yellow because it tells TikTok algorithm, oh, he wants to save this. He wants to watch this at a later date. So maybe this live is worth promoting. Maybe this content creator has got something. Number four, comment. And I'm not talking about just an emoji. That doesn't work. TikTok thinks you're a bot when you do that. Comment. At least 5 words. Bryn, I love your show. Bryn, you are the best creator on TikTok. Bryn, you are the ultimate storyteller of all time. Okay, I'm getting carried away with myself. You get the idea. Number 5. Heart it. Like it. So important. Will you do that for me? Please. Thank you. With that being said, it is time for the second story of the evening. This is another one that I had never heard before. Honestly, as I am going down through the states in alphabetical order, I am so fascinated by the stories that I'm learning. I would have never known about Joseph Henry Lovelace and the Head. I would have never known about the ghost of Little Clare Church. I want to show you you know what, I know what I did. I think I sent it to you, Julie, I believe. So I'm going to show you this adorable picture. It hasn't been met yet, X. I thought it was too, but it hasn't been met yet. Look at that little boy. He's gonna be the little ghost that we talk about tonight. Clare Church. Thank you, Sandra. Hey, Firefly. Isn't he adorable? So sad. This is going to pull at your heartstrings. But first, let's get back into story mode, shall we? For those of you who are just here, this is a ritual that we do to prepare ourselves for story time. Lower your lights. Thank you. Lock your doors. That candle's still lit. Pull your curtains nice and tight. Wrap yourself in your warmest blanket to avoid the chills that are about to crawl up your spine. And let's begin. Return to me, night dwellers. For tonight, I beckon you into the heart of Boise, Idaho, where the shadows of federal buildings cast long memories, and where innocents died in agony over a century ago. Tonight, we step through the threshold of 200 East Idaho Street, where a child's laughter still echoes through rooms that no longer exist, and where tragedy transformed a little boy into something that transcends death itself. They called him Claire, sweet little Claire Church, who would never see his 6th birthday. But death, my dear dark night dwellers, is not always the end of the story. Sometimes it is merely the beginning of something far more terrifying. Settle into the darkness with me, for this tale will wrap around your soul like the cold fingers of a child who died in unspeakable agony, calling out for someone, anyone, to acknowledge his eternal pain. In my realm, there are no peaceful deaths, only transformations into something that hungers for recognition, for justice, for the warmth of the living that was stolen away too soon. Chapter 1, The House of Gold and Sorrow. What foundation of tragedy must be laid for a home to become a gateway to the damned? Picture, if you will, night dwellers, the year 1895, when Idaho territory was still wild and untamed, when gold flowed like water through the fingers of desperate men, and when federal power was establishing its first foothold in this unforgiving land. It was in this year that Frank Forrester Church received an appointment that would forever bind his family's fate to the supernatural realm. Superintendent of the SA office, a position of great prestige and terrible responsibility. The Boise SA office was not merely a building, Night Dwellers. It was the first major federal government structure in Idaho Territory. A temple of commerce where gold and precious metals surrendered their secrets to scientific scrutiny, where fortunes were made or destroyed with a simple test for purity. Frank Church built his family home at 200 East Idaho Street with the pride of a man who had achieved the American dream. The house was solid, respectable, filled with the laughter of 5 children who knew nothing of the darkness that would soon claim one of their own. Thank you, Cece. Albert, Evangeline, Elmer, Frank Jr., and the youngest, the most precious one, because he was the baby, Francis Clarence, whom the family lovingly called Claire. I cannot believe Claire is going to be 5 tomorrow. Miss Church would have told her husband that July morning in 1905, her voice bright with maternal joy. Oh, let's see, I need to go into town for the party supplies, and I need to make sure that I've got enough glasses for the guests, and the boys will look after each other while I'm gone. I'll take Evangeline with me. So she left. But she was wrong, Night Dwellers. So terribly, tragically wrong. For while she walked the dusty streets of Boise with her daughter, selecting ribbons and treats for her youngest son's birthday celebration, death was already striking, stalking through the rooms of 200 East Idaho Street, hunting for innocent prey. The house itself seemed to anticipate the tragedy that was coming. Built with the precision of federal architecture, every board and beam perfectly aligned, every room designed for order and propriety. But beneath that veneer of respectability, something older and hungrier was stirring. Ancient forces that fed on suffering and delighted in the corruption of innocence. Little Claire Church was a typical 5-year-old boy, curious, energetic, eager to help his older brother with any task that might make him feel grown up and important. On that fateful July 17th, as the summer beat down on the Idaho countryside, he bounded into the kitchen where 13-year-old Elmer was preparing a surprise. "What are you making, Elmer?" Claire asked, his small voice bright with excitement. "Lemonade for your birthday party tomorrow, little brother," Elmer replied, gathering sugar and lemons. "Mother will be so pleased when she comes home and finds it all ready. I try to help her out. We keep her busy." I can help! Claire insisted, dancing around his older brother with the irrepressible energy of childhood. And help he did, Night Dwellers. But the help that little Claire Church provided that day would transfer him from a living, breathing child into something far more terrifying. A spirit trapped between worlds, doomed to replay his final moments for over a century. Claire scampered to the pantry, his small feet pattering across the wooden floor as he searched for something special to add to their lemonade. The pantry was dark and filled with mysterious bottles and containers, a treasure trove for a curious child who couldn't yet read the labels that, well, might have indeed saved his life, if he could have. Little Claire climbed the shelves, and there on a high shelf where it was supposed to be safely out of reach sat a bottle that gleamed like liquid crystal in the dim light. To Claire's innocent eyes, it looked like to Claire's innocent eyes, it looked like the most wonderful addition to their special lemonade. Clear, pure, and somehow magical in its pristine transparency. Ooh, look at that. What is that? Elmer! Elmer, look what I found! Claire called out, clutching this bottle to his small chest. This will make the best lemonade ever! Wait, Claire, let me see that first, Elmer began. But it was too late. When he walked in, he heard the glass clinking, the liquid pouring. The carbolic acid hit Claire's tongue like liquid fire. Night dwellers. Carbolic acid, used as an antiseptic and cleansing agent, stored carelessly within reach of innocent hands. The moment that corrosive poison touched his mouth, little Claire Church began to die in the most agonizing way imaginable. His screams filled the house at 200 East Idaho Street, echoing off the federal precision walls and embedding themselves into the very foundation of the building. They were not the cries of a child with a scraped knee or a broken toy. These were the death screams of pure innocence being consumed by unimaginable pain. Help! Someone help us! Elmer screamed as he watched his little brother convulse in agony. Claire's drank something! He's dying! He's dying! Where's my mom? Elmer left Claire behind. He ran for the doctor, his feet flying over the dusty streets of Boise as fast as young legs could carry him. But even as he ran, he knew in his heart that it was too late. The poison was already coursing through Claire's small body, burning away his life from the inside out. By the time the doctor arrived at 200 East Idaho Street, little Claire Church had already begun his transformation from living child to something else entirely. His body lay still, but his spirit was just beginning to understand what had been stolen from him. 3 days later, as Miss Church wept over her son's small coffin, as the family prepared for a funeral instead of a birthday party, little Claire was laid to rest in St. John's Cemetery. But rest, night dwellers, was the one thing that would forever be denied to him. For the house at 200 East Idaho Street had drunk deep of his innocent blood, had absorbed his final screams, had become forever marked by the tragedy that unfolded within its walls, and little Claire Church, robbed of his 5th birthday, robbed of his life, robbed of his future, would spend the next century trying to reclaim what had been taken from him. The ghost of Little Clare Church was born in agony, Night Dwellers. An agony, as you will soon learn, is a powerful force for haunting the living. Chapter 2, The Awakening of Sorrow. When does a child's innocent spirit become something that terrifies the living? 65 years, Night Dwellers. 65 long years the house at 200 East Idaho Street stood silent, harboring its terrible secret within walls that had witnessed unspeakable suffering. The Church family eventually moved away, unable to bear the memories that lurked in every corner. Claire would appear to them in the kitchen, in the living room, at the top of the steps, in his bedroom. But just look at them. Why won't you talk to me? And when the Church family moved away, little Claire remained behind, growing stronger in his sorrow, more desperate in his loneliness. By 1970, the federal grandeur of the original structure had faded into the shabby respectability of a rental property. The gilt had tarnished, the wood had weathered, but the spiritual stain of tragedy remained, as vivid as the day Claire took his final agonizing breath. Hello, Acid TV. It was into this house of hidden horrors that Joanne moved with her 3 children, seeking nothing more than affordable housing and a fresh start. She was a young mother, recently divorced, trying to build a new life from the fragments of the old. The house seemed perfect, spacious, reasonably priced, so low that she couldn't believe it herself, with enough room for her growing family. They had been there during their first week in the house. Joanne would never admit it around the children, but she told the next door neighbor, "There's something about this place, especially upstairs. Do you ever feel it? It's like, I mean, it's probably just because it's old, but I get the strangest feeling when I'm up there, like someone's watching me." Her neighbor looked at her. "No, I don't really sense anything. I mean, I know that they broke this up into 4 units, but I mean, I haven't really sensed anything." But it wasn't just a feeling, Night Dwellers. Little Clare Church had been watching, waiting, growing more restless with each passing decade. The presence of children in his house again had awakened something in his spectral consciousness, a desperate hunger for connection, for acknowledgement, for the childhood companionship the death had so cruelly stolen from him. The first manifestation came during what should have been a moment of peaceful solitude. Joanne, the first person. I was taking a bath. The kids had went to school, and I was letting the warm water just wash away the stress of moving and starting over. And I was so close to divorce and being free from my abusive ex-husband. And then the bathroom lights flickered once, And then I remember they went out completely, and it was just terrifying because I was plunged into absolute darkness. What the hell? Joanne muttered, groping for a towel in the darkness. But when the light suddenly flicked back on, she gasped in shock and horror. The bath water that had been warm and comforting just moments before was now ice cold. Not lukewarm, ice cold. As if someone had drained all the warmth from it in an instant. As if something desperate and lonely had absorbed every degree of heat, trying to feel alive again. That was little Claire's first direct contact with the living in over 6 decades. He had forgotten how wonderful the warmth felt, how precious and vital the heat of a living body could be. And now, starved for that sensation, he began to reach out in the only ways his spectral existence would allow. The manifestations escalated quickly after that initial contact. The family began hearing sounds that had no earthly source, like the tinkling of a small bell, as if a child were playing with a toy. Voices echoed through the halls at night, sometimes laughing, sometimes crying, always calling out for attention that never came. Joanne's youngest child complained one evening. She was getting ready to put him to bed. First person. Joey, come on. I've told you 3 times it's ready to go to bed. Your covers are down. I've got your nightlight on. Now come on. It's time to go to bed. Mom, I don't want to go in there. Why not? Someone's calling my name. Calling your name? Who's calling your name, Joey? I don't know. It's a boy. He keeps saying, play with me. Play with me from the upstairs hallway. He's creepy looking. Joanne was no fool, night dwellers. She recognized the signs of a supernatural presence, and her first instinct was to protect her children. But she was also curious, a fatal flaw when dealing with the restless dead. Instead of fleeing, instead of seeking help from clergy or paranormal experts, she decided to investigate. The Boise Public Library became her second home as she drove deep into the history of 200 East Idaho Street. And there, in yellowed neighborhood newspaper clippings and death certificates, she found the truth that the house had been hiding for 65 years. Frank Forrester Church, the assay office, 5 children, and the death notice that made her blood run cold. Francis Clarence Church, age 5, died July the 17th, 1905, from accidental poisoning. Survived by parents and 4 siblings. Service to be held at St. John's Cemetery. Joanne took off her glasses. Oh, you poor little thing, she whispered as she read the tragic details. You were just a baby. You never got to grow up. But knowing the truth rather than bringing peace seemed to energize the spirit of little Claire Church. He had been acknowledged, recognized, given back his identity after decades of nameless haunting. And with that recognition came power. The power to manifest more clearly, to make his presence known in ways that would terrify even the most sympathetic observer. The family began calling him Eddie. perhaps because they couldn't bear to use his real name. Joanne sat her children down one night and told them, "So I don't want you to be afraid, but I know what is haunting this house." It was a little boy. He was 5 years old when he passed. His name was Claire Church. I don't think that he means any harm. So, with him being so young, let's call him Eddie. Maybe we could talk to him, tell him hi. Maybe you could even communicate with him, Joey. He's just about your age. So they called him Eddie. Perhaps because they couldn't bear to use his real name. Perhaps because the spirit himself had forgotten what he truly was called after so many years of isolation. But regardless of his name, his manifestations grew stronger and more frequent. Joanne was the first to actually see him, Night Dwellers. She described him as a ball of energy that spun around very quickly until the face of a young boy appeared. A swirling vortex of spectral power that coalesced into the innocent features of a child who had died in agony over half a century before. Her youngest child called out one evening, "Mama, look! There's that boy again!" He was pointing to the attic window. They were outside in the yard. "He's watching us from upstairs. Hey, Eddie!" And there he was, Night Dwellers. Little Claire Church, pressing his spectral face against the glass, his dead eyes fixed on the living children playing in the yard below. The yard where he should have played. The life he should have lived. The birthday parties he should have celebrated. But the most chilling revelation came when that same child pointed to a specific corner of the house and made an observation that froze Joanne's blood in her veins. It was a small room. No longer the kitchen of the 1800s. Now, it was just a small office. Her little boy walked over. "That's where Eddie died," the child said simply, pointing to a corner near the old pantry. "He told me so." Little Claire Church was not just haunting the house, Night Dwellers. He was reliving his death over and over again, trapped in an endless cycle of reaching that fatal bottle, drinking the poison, and dying in agony. And now with his living witnesses to acknowledge his tragedy, his manifestations were only growing stronger. The ghost of Little Claire Church was no longer content to simply exist in the shadows. He wanted interaction. He wanted playmates. He wanted the childhood that had been stolen from him. And soon, Night Dwellers, he would discover that wanting something badly enough can give even the dead the power to reach out and take it. Chapter 3. The Child Who Refused to Rest. What happens when innocence becomes the force of supernatural terror? Thank you. By 1972, Night Dwellers, the ghost of Little Claire Church had grown comfortable with his living audience. 2 years of acknowledgement, 2 years of being seen and spoken to, had fed his spectral essence until he was strong enough to affect the physical world in ways that defied natural law. Joanne, perhaps foolishly, had decided that sharing her home with a ghost child was preferable to the financial strain of finding new housing. She convinced herself that Claire, whom they still called Eddie, was harmless, just a lonely spirit seeking connection. How wrong she was about to discover herself to be. Joanne, first person. I would talk to him just like he was my child. I would tell him that I was getting ready to fix breakfast, bacon and eggs, orange juice, milk. I pointed everything out to him. Financial necessity led Joanne to make a decision that would prove catastrophic. She decided to sublet another room in the house, bringing strangers into an environment already saturated with supernatural energy. She told herself it was just about making ends meet, but deep down, she must have known that she was introducing fresh souls into Claire's domain. The house is plenty big enough, she told her first two potential tenants, two young women who were looking for affordable housing. There are some unusual sounds sometimes. It's just an old house settling and all that, but there's nothing to worry about. But Claire was worried. Night dwellers. These newcomers didn't know his story, didn't acknowledge his presence, didn't understand that this was his house, his domain, his eternal playground. He had grown possessive at 200 East Idaho Street, and he did not appreciate strangers invading his territory. Not at all. The two young women who rented the room barely lasted a month. Doors would open and close on their own, sometimes gently, sometimes with violent force that shook the walls. They would hear the sound of children laughing and playing in empty rooms, the patter of small feet running through hallways in the dead of night. This place is insane, one of the women told Joanne. Last night my bedroom door slammed shut so hard I couldn't open it. I had to climb out of the window. And cold spots, the other one added, shivering despite the summer heat. There's this one little corner in our room where the temperature just drops, like standing next to an open freezer. What can you do about this? Nothing. That's what Joanna could do. Nothing. They moved out within the week, night dwellers, leaving behind only whispered warnings about the haunted house on East Idaho Street. But their departure didn't satisfy little Claire Church. If anything, it seemed to frustrate him even further. He had driven away potential playmates, and now he was lonelier than ever. That's when David Mitchell answered Joanne's advertisement for the attic room. David was different from previous tenants. He was older, more skeptical, the kind of man who prided himself on not believing in nonsense like ghosts and hauntings. When Joanne told him about Eddie and the strange occurrences throughout the house, he laughed it off. He said, "Lady, I've lived in old houses before. Creaky floors, settling foundations, pipes making noise. There's a rational explanation for everything. I'm not afraid of some imaginary ghost child. The rent is affordable. I want the room." But little Claire Church heard every word. Night dwellers. And for the first time in his spectral existence, he felt something new. Anger. Pure, innocent, childhood anger at being dismissed. being called imaginary, being treated as if his suffering didn't matter. David moved into the attic room with confidence, and his beloved dog, a faithful companion that had been with him for years. The attic was Claire's special place, night dwellers, the highest point in the house, closest to the heaven he had been denied, furthest from the pantry where he had died in agony. The first night passed quietly, much to David's smug satisfaction. He went to bed believing he had proved his point about rational explanations and imaginary ghost. But Little Claire Church was just getting started. He was planning something special for the man who had dared to mock his existence. Come on, boy, time for bed. David murmured to his dog on the second night, settling into the narrow attic bed with the confidence of a man who believed himself safe from supernatural retribution. Thank you, Mia. But sometime in the darkest hours before dawn, as David slept peacefully in his attic sanctuary, Little Claire Church, thank you, Pom, decided to teach him a lesson about the power of imaginary ghost. The spirit that had once been an innocent 5-year-old boy reached out with spectral hands and touched the physical world with devastating effects. Fire, night dwellers. Fire erupted in David Mitchell's attic room with supernatural suddenness and intensity. Not the slow smolder of an electrical malfunction or the gradual spread of an October candle. No, an explosion of flame that consumed everything in its path with vengeful fury. David managed to escape the room. He ran down the steps. Fire! Fire! Get out! Get out! His room was engulfed in flames that seemed to burn with unnatural heat and speed. David threw himself, the remaining portion, down the stairs, night dwellers. 2 nights later, he went back up to the same room, the attic, and looked at it. That attic was the only room in the house that had burned. He was now living on the 2nd floor in another bedroom. This time, Claire had a little bit more fun with him. Whilst he was sleeping, he felt hands brush over his face, and something pulled his hair. David began swatting. He couldn't get away from it. And then he heard a little boy's laughter. David threw himself from the window, night dwellers, crashing to the ground below with injuries that would heal in time. But his faithful dog, his innocent companion who had done nothing to offend the ghost of Little Claire Church, he followed his owner everywhere, even out the window. He did not make it. The fire department was baffled at the blaze that gutted the upper attic floor of 200 East Idaho Street, but never reached the lower levels of the house. Witnesses reported that they saw a small figure at the attic window, staring out from the flames, a child's silhouette backlit, watching the destruction with what could only be described as satisfaction. Little Claire Church had learned a terrible lesson in his years of haunting. If he couldn't have playmates, if he couldn't have acknowledgement, if he couldn't have the life that had been stolen from him, then he would make sure no one else in the house would have peace in his house either. The fire and subsequent water damage made 200 East Idaho Street uninhabitable in the attic. Joanne and her family decided to move out, leaving behind the ghost of Little Claire Church to rule over the remain and the ruins of his domain. The house that had sheltered 5 generations of tragedy stood empty and broken once again, a monument to the power and innocent suffering transformed into supernatural rage. But Claire's story was far from over, night dwellers. For sometimes, destroying something you love is the only way to ensure that it remains yours forever. And sometimes, the most innocent spirits can become the most terrifying when their pain is finally given form and fury. The ghost of Little Claire Church had tasted power, had felt the satisfaction of supernatural revenge, and he would never be content to simply haunt quietly again. Chapter 4, The Final Destruction. Night dwellers. How does a child's spirit become an agent of absolute devastation? March 1973. Night dwellers. A date that should have marked the end of Little Claire Church earthly connection. Yes, it should have. The final severing of his ties to the mortal world. But sometimes the most devastating endings become the most powerful of beginnings. And sometimes destroying what you haunt only makes your spirit stronger. The bulldozers came on a cold March morning, their steel blades gleaming in the pale Idaho sun. The city had condemned 200 East Idaho Street after the fire damage, declaring it beyond repair, and it was just old. Too dangerous for human habitation. What they didn't know, what they didn't understand, was that it had been too dangerous for human habitation since the day Little Claire Church died in agony in 1905. But as the demolition crew prepared for teardown, the house that had been his home for 68 years, Little Claire Church felt something he had never experienced in his spectral existence. True terror. Thank you, Nana Sherry. Not the fear of pain, for the dead cannot suffer physical harm, but the existential horror of losing the only anchor he had in the world of the living. Don't take my house! His spirit screamed into the morning air, though only the most sensitive among the demolition crew felt the chill that accompanied his anguish. This is where I live! This is where I die! You can't take it from me! But they could, night dwellers, and they did. Board by board, beam by beam, the house at 200 East Idaho Street was torn apart and rolled away. The pantry where Claire had found the fatal bottle was reduced to splinters. The corner where he had died in agony was ground into dust. The attic window where his spirit had watched the living world was shattered into 1,000 glittering pieces. As each section of the house fell, Little Clare Church felt himself, pieces of himself being torn away as well. The wallpaper that had absorbed his death screams, the floorboards that had been stained with his innocent blood, the very foundation that held his spiritual essence for nearly 7 decades, all of it demolished, all of it destroyed, all of it hauled away like refuse. But here's what the demolition crew didn't understand, Night Dwellers. Here's what the city planners and the developers and the architects who built on that site never realized. When you destroy a haunted house, you don't destroy the ghost. You set it free. For 68 years, Little Clare Church had been bound to 200 East Idaho Street by the trauma of his death. But the physical connection to the place where his life has ended. But when the bulldozers tore down those walls, when they scattered the debris to the winds, they broke the chains that had kept his spirit confined to a single location. Claire's essence didn't dissipate when his house was destroyed. Instead, it spread outward like ripples in a dark pond, seeping into the very ground where 200 East Idaho Street had stood. The soil drank deep of his spiritual energy. The earth itself became saturated with his innocent rage and eternal sorrow. The site where Little Clare Church had lived and died and haunted for nearly 7 decades became something new. Not a house, no, but a spiritual wound in the fabric of reality itself. The developers who built St. Luke's Medical Campus on that cursed ground thought they were creating a place of healing, a sanctuary for the sick and for the injured. We built something positive here, the city planners declared. A medical facility to help people, to heal the community. Thank you, Delia. What better use for this empty lot? But they had built their hospital of healing directly on top of one of the most potential spiritual contamination, thank you, Lulu, in all of Boise, Night Dwellers. They had constructed the monument to life on the exact spot where innocence had died in screaming agony, where a child's spirit had festered in rage and loneliness for the better part of a century. A Little Clare Church, no longer bound to physical structure, no longer limited to a single building, was now free to wander throughout the entire area. The intersection of East Bannock Street and East Idaho Street became his new domain. Not a house, but a spiritual territory that he could claim and defend with powers that had grown exponentially since his liberation. Thank you, X. The staff at St. Luke's began reporting strange occurrences almost immediately after the facility opened. Elevators that moved on their own, stopping at floors where no one had pressed the call button. Medical equipment that malfunctioned without explanation, particularly in the sections of the hospital that were built directly over Claire's old house. And most disturbing of all, the sound of a child laughing and playing in the corridors during the quiet hours of the night shift. One of the nurses commented, "There's something wrong with the East Wing." They would whisper to each other during shift changes. "We have patients reporting that they're seeing a little boy in their rooms, and the temperature in this section drops for no reason." I'm telling you, I was walking down that hall the other night, and I swear I saw a little boy standing at the end of the corridor. And what was so creepy about it was right under that exit sign, you know, the red sign. It was terrifying. The thermostats read normal, but you could still see your breath. But Claire wasn't just haunting randomly anymore. Night dwellers. His years of isolation and rage had taught him to target his manifestations, to seek out those who reminded him of what he had lost. Children brought to the hospital were his special focus. Young patients who had the life and future that had been stolen from him. Some reported a little boy visiting their rooms at night, trying to play games, asking them to come with him. Come with me to somewhere fun. Others woke to find their IV lines disconnected, their medical equipment mysteriously malfunctioning, as if something was trying to prevent their recovery, to keep them in the hospital permanently. Or perhaps even more than that. The destruction of 200 East Idaho Street had not ended the haunting of Little Claire Church, night dwellers. It had transformed it into something far more powerful and far more dangerous. No longer confined to a single building, no longer limited to frightening tenants and renters, he was now free to spread his influence throughout an entire medical complex. The ghost of Little Claire Church had learned the ultimate lesson in supernatural existence. Sometimes the greatest power comes not from holding on to what you have, but from letting it be destroyed so that you can become something infinitely more terrifying. The house was gone, but the haunting had just begun its next and most deadly phase. St. Luke's had been built on cursed ground. Night dwellers, and Little Claire Church was finally free to claim all the playmates that he wanted. Chapter 5. The Eternal Child. What becomes of innocence when it is given infinite time to transform into something else? Today, night dwellers, if you were to visit the intersection of East Bannock Street and East Idaho Street in Boise, you would see nothing but the sterile efficiency of a modern medical complex. St. Luke's Hospital stands where 200 East Idaho Street once harbored its dark secrets. And the casual observer would never suspect the supernatural storm that rages beneath the surface of this seemingly benign location. But Little Claire Church is still there, night dwellers, still waiting, still watching, still hungering for the childhood that was stolen from him over a century ago. The hospital staff have learned to work around the phenomena that they cannot explain or officially acknowledge. Night shift nurses know which elevators to avoid during certain hours. Maintenance workers have learned not to investigate the sound of children playing in empty corridors. Security guards have stopped filing reports about the small figure that appears on surveillance cameras, always in places where children should not be. It's just something you get used to. One veteran nurse confided to a newcomer. The East Wing gets cold sometimes, equipment acts up, and you might see things that, well, that probably aren't there. But nothing really dangerous happens. I mean, it's like working with an invisible child who just wants attention. But that nurse was wrong. Night dwellers. Terribly, fatally wrong. For little Claire Church is no longer the innocent 5-year-old who died from carbolic acid poisoning in 1905. He has had over a century to grow and change and evolve. And what he has become is something far more complex and dangerous than a simple child ghost. Claire has learned to feed on the emotional energy of the hospital, the fear of the patients facing surgery, the grief of families losing loved ones, the desperation of those clinging to life. Each moment of human suffering strengthens his spectral essence. Each tear shed in his domain adds to his power. And he has learned to be patient, to wait for the perfect opportunity to strike. You see, he's not the only child now. He has playmates. Children's wards are his hunting ground now. Night dwellers, young patients who are vulnerable, alone, scared in the darkness of hospital nights. Claire appears to them as a friend, a playmate, someone who understands what it's like to be small and helpless in a world controlled by adults. Don't be scared, he whispers to frightened children lying in their hospital beds. I know games we can play. I know places we can go where the doctors can't find us. Come with me, and you'll never have to be sick again. Some children have accepted his invitation, night dwellers. They've slipped away from their beds in the middle of the night, down wandering corridors in trance-like state, speaking of the nice boy who promised to show them wonderful things. Others have been discovered in restricted areas of the hospital, places that should have been impossible for young patients to access, always claiming that their new friend had led them there. And a few, a precious few, have simply vanished entirely. Death, for their bodies remained in their beds, but something vital, something essential is gone from them. They stare with empty eyes, speak in monotone voices, and show no interest in toys or games or the loving presence of their families, as if something had stolen away their childhood essence, leaving only hollow shells behind. Little Claire Church has discovered that he cannot reclaim his own lost childhood, but he can steal pieces of childhood from others. Each innocent soul he touches loses a little of their vitality, their joy, their essential life force. And Claire grows stronger, more real, more capable of affecting the physical world. The hospital administration has learned to quietly transfer problematic pediatric cases to other facilities, to avoid certain rooms and certain floors when possible, to maintain a conspiracy of silence about the phenomena that plagued their East Wing. They cannot transfer Little Claire Church, and they cannot avoid the truth that festers beneath their sterile floors. For Claire has learned the ultimate secret of supernatural existence. Night dwellers, he has discovered that innocence, when corrupted by sufficient suffering and rage, becomes the most terrifying force in the spiritual realm. A child's ghost is not built or bound by adult logic or mature restraint. It operates on pure emotion, pure need, pure hunger for what was stolen. And so the ghost of Little Claire Church continues to haunt the ground where 200 East Idaho Street once stood, now disguised as a place of healing, but forever marked by tragedy. He waits in the corridors, of St. Luke's Hospital, patient as only the dead can be, calling out to vulnerable children with promises of games and friendship and adventures that will last forever. The house may be gone, night dwellers, but the haunting is eternal. Little Clare Church has become something far more powerful than any mere ghost. He's become a force of innocent malevolence that grows stronger with each passing year, each new victim, each stolen piece of childhood joy. And somewhere in the shadows of that medical complex, in the space between heartbeats and the silence between screams, you can still hear the echo of a 5-year-old boy who died in agony over a century ago, still calling out, "Come play with me. Come play with me." Still calling out for someone to play with him forever. The ghost of Little Clare Church will never rest, night dwellers, for in the realm of the supernatural, some hungers can never be satisfied, and some innocence can never be reclaimed. In hospital halls where healing should dwell, a child's ghost weaves his temporal spell. I am the queen who tells his tale of innocence lost beyond the pale. Little Clare Church, forever 5, seeks stolen youth to feel alive. But I am the one who speaks his name, who feeds your nights with spectral flame. Through medical wings his spirit roams. In sterile halls he's made new homes, while I, your queen of shadows deep, disturb the peace of mortal sleep. Each child who hears his ghostly call, each soul who answers, doomed to fall into my realm where nightmares grow, where innocent spirits learn to know. My stories bury deep where they cannot flee. And in the darkest corridors of your nightmares, you belong to me. You do. Take me home. Pleasant dreams. I'll see you later.